Good afternoon, folks. Ron Ray here, and we're doing another episode of Behind the Influencer. So that's a um, podcast I'm doing where we get to know some of the people that you know and love from our industry that are out there and helping people and teaching people. But what we really want to know is how did they get there? Like, what's the backstory? What's the origin story? We know what they do and we know what they talk about on stage and on YouTube and on Facebook all the time, but what made them be able to get successful? Like, how did we actually get to the point where we can be successful? I think there's a formula, and I'm trying to figure out what that formula is. So, and today we've got the lovely Emily Trevino, who is all over the place. Everybody knows and loves Emily. I've gotten to know her over the last couple of years, and she has been very nice to join us on the podcast today. Hi, Emily.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to share my story and see if anybody can take anything of that story and put it to good use.
Yeah, I hope so. So, real quick, if people don't know you, well, shame on them, but tell us, kind of who you are and what you're doing right now. What do you do?
Well, I am Lee Trevino. I'm with Wise Insurance. I'm one of the managing partners with Wise Insurance and Wise Partners, and we're based out of Houston, Texas. We obviously are in the health insurance space, and we represent Medicare, ACA, under 65 options, as well as life insurance and some retirement options as well. So that's what we do. That's who I am generally. I have a whole lot more to me that I'm sure we're going to delve into as we go through this.
Yeah. And you do some business development type stuff, business coaching with people as well.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I really focus on our our partners that are in our internal partners, whether they're employees of ours or they're affiliated with us in our 1099 channel. So I do believe that insurance agents treat this like they're just selling product to a consumer. And I really believe in the business side of it. And I really want agents to be mentored to understand that they are an entrepreneur and they are running a business. So, as I have been through this journey, I've learned a lot of things, and now I'm trying to make sure that they do it as well, just to mainly protect their business, but also to make sure that their family has the benefits of it as well. So,
Yeah, great. And how long have you been in the insurance business?
16 years.
16 years.
Yeah, I think I'm approaching 16 years in May or
Yeah.
March.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a long time. So I started when I was really young. I was the youngest one in the room. People would be like, I've had my license longer than you've been alive. So I've had all of that, and I had to fight and claw my way to earning some of the respect, if you will, in the industry at that time. So, but been in it for 16 years, and I have learned a lot.
Yeah. And now you can be one of those old timers that says, back in my day.
I can't wait to be like, I don't even need to do CE credits anymore. I've had
Oh,
my
right.
so long, I
Yeah,
can't wait
that's
to
like
be
the
that
big goal
person.
now. Yeah.
Almost
Okay.
there. I think I need what, 4 more years?
Yeah. Yeah. Is it 20 or 25?
I don't remember, but when it
That's the
is,
big
I'm gonna
goal.
be like,
It's not making a lot of money and retiring to a beach somewhere. It's not having to do CEs anymore.
yeah, it's the CEs that kill it. Because I'm always like the night before, like, ooh,
Yeah. Right.
Oh,
I'm thinking about who can I pay to do this for me?
well, you
That
can't. It's
I
illegal.
I know.
So
I
don't
know.
do
That's why I don't do it.
that. I know.
All right. So that's kind of where you're at now, but I want to know like how you got there and where you're what in your life the that made you into the type of person that ended up being successful in our business. And if you've been in it for 16 years and you're doing what you do, let's just
Right.
assume that you're successful and you're good at what you do. So how did you get there? Where'd you grow up? And tell us about
Okay,
that.
so you want to go. Okay, so
I want to
I'll
go way
give
back,
you
all the
my
way.
pre-professional life
Oh, yeah.
real quick.
Yep.
I was born in Idaho, actually,
Oh,
Burley, Idaho, in Burley Hospital. And my mother joined the United States Navy. So when I was around, I would say like 4, maybe 5, she was a single mom, and we moved to the Philippines. So we lived there we went through, this is actually an interesting story. We actually went through a volcanic eruption there. So we had to evacuate the island. We had to do it via aircraft carrier because there's so much ash. Ash can't get into the plane or it's going to crash and burn. So we had to go evacuate via aircraft carrier. And then we went to a small island called Cebu, but we couldn't dock. So we had to take a helicopter to the island. We waited there. We took a cargo plane to get to another airport where we can catch a commercial flight back to the US. So my mom actually got remarried to someone else in the United States Navy, who's now my stepdad, and I absolutely love him. And we lived in Charleston, beautiful place, a little town called Goose Creek. It's a suburb of Charleston. Love that. From there, we moved to Guam. So, we're living the island life,
Yeah.
and that place is tiny. It's like 8 by 32 miles. Like you can get around the whole place in like 2 hours. But it was really great. And I think a lot of that experience, we then moved to Texas, and I went to high school in Carolina High School in Corpus Christi, and went to college at UTSA and finished up at Angelo State. So been a little bit everywhere. I do think that me moving around a lot and being forced to be uncomfortable is actually, even though I still am uncomfortable at a lot of times in my life, even in my career, even doing this for 16 years, it's really actually created the foundation of why I'm able to be comfortable being uncomfortable, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that experience really shaped of who I am and what I'm willing to do. And meeting new friends in middle school is like the worst thing you have to do, I think. That's probably pretty privileged for me to say that, but in my opinion, that was pretty uncomfortable, but I was able to do that. So if you can survive middle school as a girl, meeting new friends, you can pretty much survive a lot of other things in business.
Yeah. I changed schools in the middle of 8th grade over Christmas break. And that was tough. And going from a city school in Alamo Heights in San Antonio to a country school, a very small country school was a big difference. And middle school is just the worst anyway. And
it's
even if you don't move,
it's trying times,
yeah.
It's kids learning their boundaries and figuring out who they are and what real friendship is. And there's just a lot of growing up because you went from tiny kid to teenager all in 3 years.
Yeah.
That was interesting. But yeah, I learned a lot from that experience though. And so, from there, when I graduated Angelo State, I was going to plan on moving back to San Antonio. I love San Antonio, by the way. It's an incredible, I call it like a big town, little city, but it's a really big city, but it just doesn't feel like that.
Yeah.
And I was planning on moving back there, and I was actually going to be a teacher. I got my degree in biology with a minor in chemistry. I love science. I loved it at that time. Now I'm kind of like, oh, but I learned a lot in my degree, and I actually got my first sales job offered in Houston. And I was a single mom at the time, so I really needed a job that I could have a better income potential. So while I was comfortable behind a microscope, that's just not what was going to get me where I needed to be for my son and myself. So I got my first sales job doing cold calling. And I'm not talking about cold calling. I'm talking about walking in to at least 50 businesses a day, qualifying them, talking to a gatekeeper that doesn't want to talk to you because you're a solicitor, and having to overcome. I've been kicked out of buildings. I've had security guards with my picture on it that are like, don't let this lady back in. I mean, you have to go and play games. Like you have to go to like the 16th floor, then down to the 11th, and you can only cold call like 1 or 2 businesses. And then you got to get out of there before the security guard knows who you are. Like I've had to play like all those games when I was younger. And it's really hard to do that when I'm not really an extrovert person. I really like to be by myself and I'm an extrovert when I want to be, but I'm typically like to be by myself, So
Right.
that was an interesting sales job. But I'll tell you, man, I mean, I'm definitely a lot better of a salesperson now than I was back then. But being forced with all those different objections and having to be creative and having to way overthink things really helped me out during that time. So
Yeah.
it was interesting.
Yeah. It helped you develop that thick skin that
Yeah.
I think
We had a
a lot
boss.
of people lack.
Yeah, I had a boss who was like, what's your daily goals? And I'm like, goals? I don't do that. Like make a sale. And he's like, no, because you're not going to, if you're just trying to make a sale every day, it's going to really hurt, you know? But one of our daily goals that he helped me with was small things like turning a no into a yes, or getting 7 no's so you can get the 8th one to be a yes, things like that. So that when you're out in the field, it can be very redundant. It can be very challenging on your mental state, if you will, especially when you're brand new. And I think a lot of agents go through that too, is they're like, man, I didn't make a sale today. I got to get up and do the same thing tomorrow. It's like the pure definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, hoping to get different results. But those little tiny goals, if you have the right goals down, it really kind of helps you. And it can't just be always about money and like making a certain amount of appointments. It can't always be like that. It's got to be some tinier things that are achievable and slowly putting you in the right direction. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So,
Yep. Something that adds up to whatever the ultimate goal is at the end of the day or the month.
exactly.
And for me, I turn it into a game.
That's essentially what you're doing, is a competitive game with yourself.
Yeah, there's different ways to kind of quantify that. You can do it as every no is worth a certain dollar amount. Every time somebody hangs up on me, that's $3. Because
that's actually interesting. So when we started doing more of the life insurance stuff, I got linked up with Pete Fournier, and he gave me that perspective. I had never heard that before, honestly. And he was like, yeah, so every dial's worth X dollars. And you figure that out by tracking how many dials you get, your connects, and then how many you actually close. And then, you do all the math and do all the mathy things. And I need a calculator, but it doesn't matter. Every call was worth something, because you knew about how many dials you needed to make before you got an appointment, before you made a sale. So that was a different way of thinking about it, rather than I'm just doing 100 dials today. It's like, I made $2. Oh, I made $2. You maybe didn't make $2 off that particular dial, but you did as you made the right amount of dials to get the appointment to make the sale. You know?
Exactly. Yep. Or I used, when I was cold calling, turn it into a game. How many calls could I make before my coffee got cold? I had to go refill it, because there's certain things that absolutely will interrupt my day. One is my coffee getting cold.
Wow.
And then I figured out I could get one of those little cup warmers, and I set my coffee down, and it never got cold.
I was just going to say that. So I was like, well, I'll never get cold. Then they will be making dials all day.
Yeah. So so born in Iowa.
Idaho.
Oh, way out there. Okay.
Yeah.
And then moved to the Philippines, and came back, and then moved to Guam, and then came back, went to college here. So like, where were you when you graduated from high school?
I was in Corpus Christi.
Corpus. Oh yeah, you went to Cal Allen. Okay. And how was that? Did you play sports, or were you in the band? How did you do in school?
Yeah, so I did pretty well in school. I mean, I'm not gonna say I was a straight A student, because I certainly was not, but I did my fair share of honors classes. I had my first job at Domino's Pizza. It was pretty great. Ate a lot of pizza. I still love Domino's. And I actually ran cross country and track, and I kind of fell into that by accident, because my 8th grade year in middle school, I wanted to try out for volleyball. Well, in Texas, in Guam, you could actually join like sports in middle school and not know how to play, and they would figure it out. In Texas is a whole nother animal. These kids know how to play everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I didn't even know how to serve a ball. So I didn't make the team my 8th grade year. So my freshman year of high school, I tried out for the volleyball team, but I didn't make it. And it really sucked, because I worked so hard. I worked all summer. I went to camps. I was bumping, and I was really bad at spiking the ball, but I was a great server, a great passer, a pretty decent setter. But our high school was very competitive, and the girls on that team were incredible. So I didn't make the team, but I was able to stay in the athletic class. And while I did that, we did a lot of running, tons of running. Now, I did track in middle school, but just for fun, because I wasn't doing anything else. And I know how to run. Like, that's not hard. Just put one foot in front of the other and go a little faster, So my volleyball coach was like, I mean, I was outrunning a lot of the girls. And the reason why was because my mom was training in the Navy. They have to do like a physical training test.
Mhm.
And so I'd go to the middle school track and I'd run with her every day. And so I was just getting in good shape. So in the volleyball class, she noticed that and she's like, why don't you go do track? But in my head, I was like, no, I'm going to make this volleyball team. I'm not going to be distracted. And she kept talking to me about it, talking about it. And she's like, I'm going to call your mom. Because I actually said, I don't think my mom wants me to do that. That's what I said. I don't know what the heck I was thinking because my mom does not care. And she's like, I think I'm going to call your mom. I'm like, well, let me talk to her and then I'll tell you tomorrow, you know? So obviously if my mom gets a phone call, she's going to be really mad at me.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and said, my mom said it was cool. And so I went ahead and did track and I was a long distance runner. I did the 2 mile, the mile, and then the mile relay, which is really hard. But I eventually finished off doing the 400-yard, which is like you sprint one time around the track, which is I think is incredibly difficult. Then I did the 800 where you got to do it twice around the track, which is also incredibly difficult because you can't ever settle into a pace. You just got to like sprint the whole time. So you're like just dying for 2 laps around this track.
Yep.
And then I did the mile relay and I loved the mile relay. I loved it so much. In my junior year, we were going to district. Our team was good. We were winning first place almost every single time, maybe second. Worst case scenario, we were really good. Well, when you go to district and you run the race, there's 4 of you in that race. It was my favorite race. I was doing peak times. I was doing really good. Well, there were some seniors on the team, so they naturally got the position. And that year we actually qualified for regionals. So I was really upset because I ran all season. And actually, I was so defeated about it. I was so irritated about it that my senior year, I did not give it my all for cross country or track. My attitude really just was like, I'm done. I didn't get to run my race. I didn't get what I wanted. I'm done. And I really regret doing that because I could have done a lot more with it my senior year. And my aspirations was to run in college. And I ended up not doing it because of my poor attitude. Honestly, that is the truth. A lot of people don't want to admit that, but I had that.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot from that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting, because when I do talk to people, successful people, I always ask that question, did you play sports in high school and college? And a vast majority of them say yes, because I think it takes that competitiveness to be successful in business.
I will say this, I think I got, and I'm not trying to put any of my teachers down or anything, because I think they all did an incredible job, but I think a lot of who I am was from sports.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important that kids have, it doesn't necessarily have to be sports, but it could be yearbook or be part of something that helps develop. I think all those extracurriculars develop students and kids into learning skills that they can actually apply in the future. Right? I mean, yes, I can read a textbook. I can take a test. I'm a terrible test taker, by the way. If you ever give me a test, even if I know I hate doing the AHIP every year, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to fail this thing.
Well, you're not
and I'm
going
like sitting there and I have massive test anxiety. I hate it. I mean, granted, I always pass, but oh gosh, I delay doing AHIP, which is a Medicare certification for anyone that doesn't know, but I literally delay it to the last week until I have to take it. So it is because I just have so much anxiety about it. But yeah. I think that you have to learn who you are as a person. And I don't think you learn that in textbooks all the time or for most people. Yep. And I think that's why sports generates a lot of successful people. I mean, I know people who played sports that are not very successful either. So it's,
Yeah, it's not 100%, but I think it's part of the recipe,
mm-hmm.
And you can leave an ingredient out of the recipe and it might still be good, but it's not going to be the
great. I mean, think about it. I mean, in school, I studied a lot. I would have to study twice as hard as everybody else, I felt like, but it was always like really hard for me to get an A in some of my classes, so I'm like, man, what the heck? But I worked hard. I did what I had to do. But I think like me going through not making the volleyball team and being basically not forced to do track, but very highly encouraged. And then having the poor attitude that I did my junior year and kind of coming out of that and maturing and realizing like some of those things really impacted me as an adult. Because I'm like, I have to change my attitude about this because if I make business decisions like I did when I was a junior in high school, I'm going to have a really big problem, you know?
Right.
So I think going through some of those challenges and reflecting back at it and saying, well, I don't do this anymore because of that. So I
Yeah.
think those are really important for individuals as you grow as a professional to like look back and hold yourself accountable. Like, hey, I just wasn't that great at that time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
When was it that you realized that was a mistake?
I was probably in my late 20s. You know, I never really thought about it. I mean, I was just kind of in my 20s. I was a single mom. I was just trying to survive, pay my bills, pay off my credit card debt, you know, just you're just like a hamster in a wheel. You're just trying to make it. I like to me, that was a dream. You have a corporate job, you have a health insurance, you have a 401k. Like I was like, yeah, I could pay all my bills. I was fine, So, but as I have this personality of like, I'm wanting more, I'm wanting more, I'm wanting more. Didn't really know where that stemmed from. But I had a lot of growing up I had to do. I had a lot of trauma I had to work through. Um, just so that I can be a better individual, better parent, and a better professional.
Mhm.
So you have to do those things. I mean, you can see people, especially on social media, like I can read people's posts. And if they have a frequent behavioral pattern, I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know. I want to do business with that person. Or I really hope they find the help that they need so they can work through this because this is not healthy for them or their business. And it will impact their business.
Absolutely. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can definitely see a lot of that coming through and just inside, the industry friends that we have. There's certain ones that just have either have a negative slant generally or a positive slant generally,
Yeah.
there's you can see that in their results that
I read
if you have any insight to the results.
Yeah, well, I read this book. It's gonna come to me, but I can't think of it right now. But I read it in my late 20s. That's when I started reading about the secret and the positivity and the universe. I think that's what got me reflecting about my past and my childhood and what was hurtful to me, which by the way, I had a great childhood. I don't have trauma from my parents at all. It's not about that. It was just more about some of my poor decision skills in college. But I read this book about relationships, and it talks about your familial relationships, your friendships, your business relationships. Even if you work in corporate, you have business relationships, colleagues, everything. And basically, what the whole book was about is if somebody is not bringing value to your life, they don't need to be there. And you don't need to give them the energy and entertain it. And I live by that rule. So, like, if you're not for me, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. We're just not meant for each other. If I can't bring you value, then I don't want to be hanging out with you. If you can't bring me value, I don't really want us to hang out. And value doesn't have to be like monetary. It doesn't have to be like, oh, let me give you this nugget, Emily. It's not like that. Value can just be like, are you an enjoyable person to be around? Do
Yeah.
you have things of positivity? Like, no one wants to hear naysayers and negative things all the time. But don't get me wrong. There's times where I can be negative too. Everybody is. Or you're just venting, or you're just going through it. And that's okay. And I'm not talking about those people. But if you're the type of person that you're just kind of always complaining and you're always a victim, like, I don't want to be around those people.
Yep.
That behavior is contagious, and I ain't trying to get it.
Yeah, it's absolutely contagious, and that's what I've done. And I, I don't think I consciously decided to do that, but it was just something that I did naturally. And then later on, after I got into business and started learning these types of things, I realized, oh yeah, I cut negative people out.
Yeah.
Wish I would have done it a lot sooner because I probably
Yeah.
would have been a lot happier.
And sometimes, like, whenever you do that, they're always like this common saying is like, don't want to burn bridges. I will burn the bridge.
Yep.
I will burn it right now.
Yep.
I do not care about it. Like, my whole thing is I'm also a very confrontational person, and not in a negative way, but it's like, hey, if I'm bothered by something, Ron, I want you to know so we can work through it. But if you're like, I don't do anything wrong, if you're just kind of like delusional, then I'm like, okay, well, this isn't going to work out. I love you for who you are, but we're moving on. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. And I've definitely run across people like that in our business. And it's like, we can be friends, but I can't do business with you, because it's just, it impacts every part. It impacts every part of your life, but there's that point where maybe you got a fun personality, at the bar after the conference, but when we're doing business, everything's a problem and it's never your fault. And
Oh yeah, I
you
can't.
can't take ownership. Then, I'll hang out with you once or twice a year when I see you, but we're
Yeah,
not
I
going to do
mean,
business together.
we're not for everybody. Like I mean, there's gonna be people that don't like me, and I'm okay with it. Like it's totally fine. Like it just don't say false things about me. I think we'll be all right. But I mean, but the thing is it's like I don't look at things as confrontation. I just
Mhm.
look at it as an opportunity to either get on the same page or move on. And other people think confrontation is just so like they want to avoid it. I hate confrontation. I'm like, well, then you're not a problem solver then.
Right.
That's how I look
Right.
at it, is you don't want to solve any problems.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of personalities in sales. It's hard to be in sales. Like we have egos, we have insecurities, we have we're boisterous, we're loud, we're passionate, we're all the things, and we're all the same personalities. But I think there's just some key characteristics that you have to have. And I
Mhm.
think that when you come from a place of like, hey, I want to bring value to you, I don't expect anything in return, even if it's just in a place of I just want to be positive or I want to encourage you or something like to me, those are valuable relationships to have and to keep near and dear.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Absolutely. Do you think that your mom and your stepdad both being in the military had much of an influence on the way, certainly your upbringing, but uh, maybe organization and discipline and things like that
yeah,
that are leading to where you're at now?
yeah, I mean, I absolutely. I mean, that's my home that I was raised in. Of course, it's going to have some impact on me. I mean, my parents have always been supportive. They never forced me to do anything, which looking back at it, I'm like, Mom, why didn't you force me to get up every day at 5 o'clock and go run 25 miles so I'd be a successful Olympian? I mean, come on, but like I would have hated her when I was a
Right.
teenager. So my parents have always just been very supportive. They're like, okay, they're gonna I will say this, my parents have always been brutally honest. And I am brutally honest with people. And it's not of an intention of bringing somebody down, but like, why do you want someone to lie to you just to be nice? Like, why can't people just be honest with you and you take it? And now I don't mean like calling them names or anything, but like if you're giving
Sure.
somebody feedback, right? I don't want people to be offended by that. You should be able to take feedback. When someone gives me feedback and I know it's true, I am not hurt by it at all. I'm like, oh, I did not know that. So I've been known to, I had an old boss say this. He's like, you have a way of serving a steak on a trash can lid. That's what he used to tell me. And I was like, was it Wagyu? I don't know, but, I just think that and that was probably a lot of my immaturity but I don't play politics well. I don't like all that stuff. Like I just want to be who I am. I want to say what I want to say. And it's always coming from a place of good intention. And I'm never like, well, I don't want to be rude, but I never say that because I'm not being rude. If it's factual, it's
Right.
not rude.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And you've got to have constructive criticism, right? Because somebody's not helping you at all by
no.
giving, blowing sunshine.
I mean, if people are and I learned this a lot from my wealth coach. I mean, he laid into me. And I learned so much from that experience. I did not like it at the time and I hated it for myself. I probably didn't like him either, but I grew a lot as an individual in 24 hours after that. But the thing is that I think it's important to hold yourself accountable. And people that are in denial, and it's mainly control freaks, it's mainly people that are like, like they're just like if people are telling you this collectively, you have to start acknowledging it. And I learned that because I was so direct and I'm serving steak on a trash can lid. I'm like, okay, this is a common thing. So I've got to find a way to clean this up a little bit. I mean, if this is collectively being told by me or to me from multiple people from different, this is like my early 20s, by the way, then I got to make a change. And I slowly made a change. I'm still direct. And I'll just tell people like, Ron, I'm going to just tell you directly. And you're like, okay, So it's just, I don't want people to lie to me, and I'm not going to lie to somebody else. And somebody made a post, I'm not going to reference them on here, but someone made a post on a Facebook group about, they were brutally honest with somebody. I wouldn't say brutally, I'd just say honest, because I know this person. They were honest with somebody about a type of marketing that he didn't feel like they were going to be good at. And that person was highly offended. But here's the deal, like, you need to know, because if you're going to go and waste all this time and all this money, like this person is trying to tell you that that's probably not where you want to put all your time right now, or your money right now, because you're so brand new to it. I would have appreciated somebody being honest with me like that my entire career.
Yeah.
So it's not, you got to always look at people's intentions. Like, is this person trying to be honest so that in my best interest, or are they just trying to hold me back? One of the two.
Yep.
And then you as an individual need to ask additional questions so you can determine the intention,
Right. Yep.
So.
Yeah, I run across that too, because, people ask me all the time advice about doing seminars for marketing. And my first statement to them is that seminars are not for beginners. You need to, because they're expensive. It's not a quick return. And you've got to be able to stand up in front of a group of people and speak eloquently, but in a certain manner.
Questions at the end, that's the most terrifying part.
Yeah, and speak so that they don't ask questions at the end, because if you answer all the questions, they're not going to come see anyway.
Exactly.
But not talk too much. And so I can talk to an agent for 10 minutes and be able to tell, look, you're not going to be happy with seminars. You're going to waste a bunch of money. And you probably shouldn't.
And it's not that you're doubting their abilities. I mean, sure, they will be able to do it, but do you want to spend let's just say $3,000 on that? Or do you want to spend $3,000 on leads you will close? It's just about spending your capital and your time wisely, which when people give you that honest feedback, if you're not taking it like that, then that's a huge problem, right? And that's going to hinder your business, because we're in a business.
That's right. Yeah.
Part of maturing as a business owner and an entrepreneur. And unfortunately, we do have a lot of people that aren't used to that kind of thing, that feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if it's generational, or it's the social media age, or it's politically correct age. But my observation is that people just don't want to hear the feedback, the not negative, but the critical feedback that's intended to help with good intentions.
Well, I think, I don't know if it's generational, but because I see it in multiple ages, I think there's a little ego plays into that. Maybe some insecurities play into it. It's a lot of other things. But at the end of the day, as a business owner, are you really going to go and invest money in something when the person that is doing it is saying, hey, look, I would do it, but maybe not right now. Maybe when you do this, or this, or maybe 6 months from now when you have this many people in your books. Or now I'll tell you, we have an LOA. She's an introvert. She's incredible. LOA is an employed agent of mine, for those who don't know. And she's incredible. She's an incredible trainer, an incredible speaker. When I told her she had to go do a seminar, she was like, she didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
Already paid for, but like I needed her to do it. I needed her to get better at it. And she went out there and she did it. Now I'm the one paying for it, and I'm the one like coordinating everything. So she didn't have to do all that, but she did incredible, and she did a great job. And it wasn't, the thing about seminars is not just about presenting the material. You can know about, let's say, because we're talking about Medicare seminars, you can know everything you need to know about Medicare. But like, do you have the systems for the follow-up? Because these people are turning 65 in 6 months. Do you have the automation set up to where you're dripping them consistently so that you're staying in front of them? If you don't have that, some of those basic things is more than just going and presenting what you know. There's a lot more to the seminars than that.
Yeah. And I had an advantage because I'd been, working at the police academy for the last 6 years and teaching adults anyway. I've been, an adult educator for 20 years now. And so I already had that educational background, and some people don't. They're, coming out of phone sales or face-to-face sales where you're working one-on-one and not really doing a whole lot of educational instruction ahead of time. And they can tend to talk too much in a seminar. Anyway, that's
true. Well,
yeah.
But here's the big thing too, though. As there's all these insurance agents, they say that there's 92% are unsuccessful after a couple of years or whatever. But here's the thing. It's also too, because we have recruiters out here, bringing on insurance agents, but not really identifying what type of sales they'd actually be really good at and what type of marketing they'd really be good at,
Right.
So like, you could take a field agent who loves doing face-to-face. I'm like that. If I have to do telesales, I mean, I'm good at it now, but if you would have done it at the beginning, I hated the phone because I need to vibe with someone. I need their energy. Like, I need that. And then you have people who are incredible at telesales. If you put them in front of the person, they're like, oh, no, I can't do it. And then if you take someone who's a hardcore closer and you put them in a consultative sales position, sometimes they're not successful. So the thing is there's a different type of sales for different types of personality. And what you're really good at is what you need to start with. But as you get moving and you start building a book of business and you have a good system, you need to start getting better at the stuff you're not good at.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I didn't like phones, but I had to get with it because I have people who are going to be selling on the phones. So I started training, watching videos, talking to people, getting better, reading scripts, writing scripts, asking for validation from like the superiors in our industry that are really good at that. You have to get better at the stuff you're not good at. But I think that's why a lot of agents who get in our business aren't successful, because they're not talking with the right recruiters, or they're not talking with the right person to identify like, hey, is life insurance the way you should go? Is property and casualty the way you should go? Is retirement planning? Is Medicare? Is health? Whatever. So they're just not being identified of like, okay, I see your personality. This is where I see you being successful in. Here's the plan. I don't think that those conversations are being had. And I think that's really unfortunate for our business.
I think so. I think that's comes from the place that a lot of agencies just aren't well diversified in their portfolio of offerings. I've diversified mine because I've got a client base that they need everything. And so I have something for everybody, but I don't necessarily have agents that can sell everything.
No, and that's okay. And also some agents don't need to sell everything.
Right.
But what you've created is you created a resource for agents to come to you and say, hey, I need this product or I need that product. So then either you can do it or someone in your office or you are networked with people who can do it. See, that's what I love about our industry is we've created this network of people that I'm like, hey, is somebody in this state that can write this product? Or, hey, I need a group plan in New York, or something like that. And there's this one guy in New York, I sent him an ACA lead because that's a thing. That's quite a special project over there in New York. He handled it. He was great. He's great to the client I sent him because she's a friend of mine. He probably did a better job than what I would do. Honestly, he was so good. And so I was like, I'm thankful for that network that we've created in our industry, that we're able to rely on people that do great work.
Right. Yeah. It's really changed a lot since I got into it, and you've been into it a couple of years more than me.
Yeah.
So, and we didn't
have that.
It
6 years ago, you were my competitor and we hated each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we're like, oh, let's collaborate. And it wasn't like, well, you better give me something if I give you. It's not like that anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Or at least not with our group of people that we know. So
right. Yeah. And that mentality is spreading, mostly because I think people have to adapt. Some of the older agencies and marketing groups are being forced to adapt because they're bleeding because of that.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it all comes from just being a good person. And
I think so.
Wanting to be good to people and not expecting anything in return. Just, you have to be good to people just to be good to people, not because you want them to give you something.
Exactly. And my whole thing is, when you're a brand new agent and you're trying to survive, you are focused on the right product and making money and selling products. I get that. Like I've been there. I know what that feeling. I absolutely know that feeling. I've been hungry before. I mean literally like needing food, right? So I think though you get to a point where you're like, okay, like I'm able to pay my bills now and okay. Then you start focusing on doing right for other people. Either you're bringing someone in the business and you're teaching them everything you know and mentoring them, or just by helping your clients and they keep sending you referrals. And I think that when you take care of people, you will always win in the end, all the time, no matter
Right.
what. And you
Right.
may not get something of value of it, may not be monetary, but you will win. And it'll eventually come around. People will either want to do business with you, people will send referrals to you, people will speak highly of you, people will give a testimonial for you. Um, People will just help you out when you're down. Like that's for me, I think that that's what it's about is building meaningful relationships
Yep.
and being loyal to those people in those relationships.
Yeah, yeah. That's one thing I've really gotten out of the last few years. I always went to different conferences, not necessarily industry conferences, but I would go to different ones and whenever I had a chance. But since some of the more what I would call non-affiliated industry conferences have started, that's really the biggest thing that I've got out of it is just the friendships and not even business relationships, but just friendships that I've gotten out of
Yeah,
meeting
just
the
people you
people
can
there.
network with.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing in New Braunfels? What are you doing in Houston? Let's,
Yep.
let me do this or do that. Or, hey, how did you do
Yep.
this? Now you help me out. It's, I think it's really important to find people to collaborate with. I collaborate a lot with Victoria and Rebecca. I mean, you know them, Victoria Cabrera out of San Antonio, Rebecca Davis out of Stephenville, Justin Brock out of Mississippi. Um, Talk with Josh Lustig out of Idaho, talk with you out of New Braunfels. I think these are all really great people. But you have to find your circle of people that you jive with, that you can you have to also bring value to them too. You can't just like be a value sucker, you
Right.
gotta like, help them out in any way you can, like, or find like, oh, this would be interesting. Maybe I should tell them about this. But when you find people, even if you are competitors, you find people, you don't have to do this by yourself. And you could have a really small problem that snowballs into a really big problem. But if you can talk it out with somebody who's already been there and done that, then you're like, oh, this is not that big of a problem. And then they just told me the answer. And now I'm out of my head and I can solve this problem in my business. So I do think it's really important to have relationships. When we first started, Ron, we didn't have that. We didn't have mentors. We didn't have people that were like, oh, let me share ideas with you. It was really cutthroat. And I feel like our industry is still like that. But I do think that it's really up to you as an individual to decide if that you want to hang out with people like that, or do you want to hang out with people that, are here to be happy to help?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, if we get back to upbringing a little bit, kids behave the way they're taught to behave or they're allowed to behave. And so it's probably, you probably are the person that you are, and I am the person that I am, just based on that fundamental foundation that we got from our parents, of just wanting to be a good person and treat people right and not be a bully and not be mean. And so, how did that, tell me about like that transition from, in your childhood years, like how was your childhood? You have siblings?
Yeah, I do. I have a brother. He's 10 years younger than me. So it was a lot younger than me. So I was like an only child for a long time. And then, he was there, and then he was an only child for a long time when I went to college. And, and he grew up different than me. I mean, he was born in South Carolina, lived in Guam with us. Obviously he's my brother, but we only lived there 2 years. And then he mainly went to elementary school, middle school, and high school with the same kids. Like that's not the same upbringing I had. So he didn't have a lot of the obstacles that I went through. And that's why I do think that the more obstacles you go through as a kid, you can either be a victim of your situation or a victor, but I chose the victor.
Right.
And I think that when the more obstacles you come and work through, the easier it is for you as an adult to handle a lot of these other issues you're going to have. You're going to face these issues one way or the other. You're going to face somebody who's a jerk. You're going to face people who bully you. You're going to face very uncomfortable situations in the workplace, on your own, friendships, relationships, intimate relationships, partnerships. It all comes.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of what your response is to that. I think my parents, they were in the military, so they had their fair share of stuff they had to deal with. And I remember hearing about it, and, they would vent to each other. And then, but in the military, there's a hierarchy and there's a way things are done there. And it doesn't matter what you think about your boss, and nobody cares unless
Right.
it's illegal. Then they do care, obviously, but you just got to make it work. And what I learned very young as a kid is life's not fair. You're not entitled to anything. You're not entitled to be comfortable at your job. You're not entitled a job. You're not entitled to paycheck. You are not entitled an awesome, amazing boss and a mentor who's going to help you grow your whole life. So you just better get used to it. And you just better be used to adapting to whatever surrounding you have and making the best of the cards you're dealt with.
Yep.
And that's what I learned from my parents. And they don't want to hear it. Like if I get in trouble, like let's say I had a teacher at school, my mom, like, I don't care. And I'm the same way with my kids, actually. But she's like, I don't want to hear it. It's your teacher. She's the boss. You do what she says, unless it's illegal, of course. And I'm saying this as a generalization, but if there's illegal things or unethical things going on, that's something totally different.
Right.
But that was not my case. But I do think it's really important that as parents, as we raise our future generations, like, my son's 17. He's going to be a junior in high school next year. He's going to have his insurance license, and I'm making him get that. I don't care if he wants to be in the insurance business or not. I want him to come in. I want him to make calls in my office. I want to make preset appointments. I want him to close some sales. I want to teach him. That is a skill he will use no matter what job he has. I want him to learn those things. He may not like it though, but stay tuned. A year from now, I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah. We need to chronicle that journey.
Oh yeah, I'm going to. It'll be pretty funny.
Yeah. So yeah, similar. My brother is 7 years younger than me, and we moved a couple of times while I was in school. And the last one was when he was starting, kindergarten, I guess. And so he went to school with the same group of kids, and in a little bit, 7 years is not that big a difference, but the schooling and the way schools handled situations was quite a bit different.
Yeah, we still had the paddle in my middle school. I remember boys going to the office and getting paddled. It was that or suspension.
Yeah,
and then
I got
took the paddle. I don't think you're allowed to do that.
I don't think they were allowed to do that when he went to school, and he's in a different spot than I am. And I mean, he's fine, but it's just, mindset wise, life wise, he's just in a different spot. And I can't help but think that we had the same parents, we had the same upbringing, the same values that we were taught. And I ended up where I'm at, and he's where he's at. And
same.
And I can't help but think that there's something to the fact that we, are soft on kids. Everybody gets a trophy. We don't paddle them in schools. Schools aren't allowed to really deal with problems like bullying is such a big deal now. And I mean, bullying's always been bad, and it's always been a thing. And
but the consequences nowadays are way worse. Like kids are taking their life like that. I'm sure that did happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
But not as frequent.
Never heard of it.
So you only got bullied while you were at school, which I'm not saying it was okay. But now these kids, it's going on social media, and like it's like 24/7 they're being bullied now. And I don't know, some of the things is really scary, but my brother is the same way. I mean, he's not in the same place as myself. I always pray that he will get to a place of peace, and he will, he's got a wonderful, lovely girlfriend, and they live together, and, he's working his way through on his own timeline, but we're not the same. We're not the same. And I think that watching him grow up, I've been harder on my kids because I don't want to deal with that when they're adults. So I'm like, no, we're not doing it, and I'm really hard on my son too, because, I'm raising somebody's husband, raising someone's father, raising someone's either boss or employee or whatever he decides to go do in life. And I take those very serious. There are parents that I think baby their kids, and oh my gosh, one of my girlfriends gave me a really hard time because, I have twin daughters that right now are 6. And one of them, Olivia, was on a soccer team and she got a little participation trophy. She's like, look at my trophy. And I was like, yeah, you got that for showing up all season, not because you won anything. And my friend was like, oh my gosh, why would you tell her that? And I'm like, because it's true. But I wasn't putting her down, because showing up and not quitting for an entire season for some kids, that is success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because a lot of people let their kids quit. They're like, oh, well, they don't want to go, so I'm just not going to deal with it. I don't want to fight with them. And I'm like, no, you committed to being there. You committed to being on the team. So a participation trophy, I do think, is good for little kids, because I want them to know that when you commit to something and you show up and you do what you say you're going to do, and that whole team relies on you, then you do deserve that trophy. But
Mm-hmm.
that is a different type of trophy than you slaughtered all the other teams and won the tournament. And they're not doing tournaments at 5 years old. Okay.
Right.
So, but people give me a hard time, and I'm like, well, I'm not lying to my kids. My parents never lied to me.
Mm-hmm.
They were honest about it. And I do the same thing. So that's the way I look at it.
Yep. Yep. I struggle with that, because I want to comfort them and, tell them it's okay. But, if you lost, you lost, do better next time.
Work hard. You want to be safe, make 100. That's what saw that in a movie somewhere, because I don't know what it was about. Actually, I don't even know what movie it was, but that quote stuck with me. Be safe, make 100. In sports, like my son, he was playing soccer for a while, and he's like, the ref made a bad call. The ref made a bad call. I was like, you know what? They're going to make bad calls. Mm-hmm. There's only like 3 of them on the whole field with all these players. There might be a small chance that they just can't see everything. Yeah. So they're going to call based on their instincts, and they never change their mind, which I think is incredible. Yeah. But my whole thing is, if you want to be that awesome, then work harder and be so much better to where there's not a questionable call, or it doesn't matter if they make bad calls, because you're still going to win with the bad call or not.
Yep.
And the bad calls is a mental thing. That's a distraction to like bring you down. So you just got to keep pumping through. And so there's moments when you can teach your kids, and also kind of teach yourself. These are pretty good, situations to be in. But it's the same thing, right? There's noise, brings you down. You got to work through it and prepare for the better. So
right.
That's why I don't really care what other people think. They can say whatever they want. If it's something constructive and I need to get better at it, I love that. If it's something I don't like her because whatever, I just okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That really applies to agents and sales too. I have agents that will have one bad phone call or lose a case. So maybe somebody free looks a policy and it just ruins their day or their week or their month. And there's 2 reasons that this is a problem for you. One is because you let it be a problem. And 2 is because you don't have a full enough pipeline.
Right.
You've got to have enough people waiting in line to talk to your services, that if one changes their mind or is ugly to you, just move on to the next one. Why do you think that we get such bad customer service in retail and doctors' offices and airlines? And it's because they've got so many people waiting in line that they do not care if you're mad.
No,
it's not going to hurt their bottom line if you get mad at
them.
them.
Also, being mad doesn't solve any problems. I've heard conversations with people that are really upset and they're like yelling at the rep, and I've definitely gotten upset on the phone before. I'm not perfect by any means. I'll raise my voice, but I'm just like, but at the end of the day, it didn't solve any problems.
Yep.
What does solve problems is me just understanding the situation. What are the next steps? Can I talk to a supervisor? And I'm direct about it, but I'm not rude. In my 20s, I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on? Well, whatever. Now I'm like, okay, let me just understand the situation. What can I do? Can I do anything? Can I talk to a supervisor? And if they tell me the same thing, then I'm like, okay, well, there's nothing I can do. I got to move on.
Right. Yeah.
That, or it depends on what it is actually, because if I know that something's not factually correct, like for example, when I had my twin daughters, I got a bill from my health insurance company. Obviously, I do this for a living, so I knew my benefits and I confirmed it. So I knew that I was being billed like my daughters were hospitalized, but they
Right.
were part of labor and delivery. So I was trying to explain that to the people. I went through probably 3 supervisors. Now, luckily, I'm in insurance and I knew what I was talking about. So I knew somebody that worked there and they got me in touch with a provider person and we worked it out, and they were just coded wrong. They had an authorization for 2 twins being hospitalized, not for labor and delivery, you know? So I'll keep going when I know I'm right, but I'm not going to keep going over semantics, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That happens to me all the time. We were vacation in Aruba a couple of weeks ago and checking out, and they had double billed me for some little thing like a hut rental on the beach for one day, and brought it to their attention, and I'm like, well, no, it's here, you signed the thing, and like, well, I didn't sign that one, that's from when I called in and reserved it, but then when I came, I signed for it, but they made an extra sheet, so you double billed it. And she called the lady, and I heard the other lady saying, oh, he didn't cancel it in time, and like, I'm not, it was $30. I'm right, but I'm not going to let it. That was the only bad thing about that vacation. I can't let that ruin my
No,
day.
not over $30. But
Yeah.
I am about principle, you know? So I probably would have been like, okay, I'll probably let it go because I don't want to irritate my husband or but if it was something business related, or if it was something related to one of my agents that they needed, I am pretty tenacious about it. Like I am going to keep going after it until it's right.
Yep.
And or I get an apology.
Yep.
I'll pay the $30, but I want you to admit and apologize for this disruption.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I just, it depends on the situation. You know what I mean? Because, you know, for our partners, I really care about them and their money and their business. And I don't let things that are reasonable and logical just go to the wayside. You know, I will
Yeah.
fight for my
Yeah.
people. So.
Yeah. I was just thinking, and a decade ago, I would have made a much larger noise about
Yeah.
that $30. But I've just come to realize that, when you're dealing with people in a situation like that, they can only do what they're allowed to do.
Yeah.
And if they're not quick enough, smart enough to figure out that you're right, what's yelling at them going to do? It'll make me feel better for 10 minutes, and then I'm right back to being mad again
Exactly. And also
about it.
too,
So
they're human and they're a whole human. They're a whole human with a family, they're a mother or a father or a son or a daughter, or, you know, they're just like anybody else. Like nobody deserves to be talked to disrespectfully, which is why sometimes I hate social media, because some of these people just go at it and you're like,
mhm.
what in the world is going on here? You know?
Yeah, and we do that with clients sometimes too. If a client makes you mad, maybe they take a few hours of your time, and then they end up, I don't know. I called Humana and I signed up. Thanks for your help. Or I bought it. My brother-in-law sells insurance, and I got that plan from him. After you spend a couple of hours with them, or the kinds that come in and they've already done all their research and they already know everything, and they just happen to be all wrong.
Yeah.
There was a day when I would just say, you know what, I'm the expert here. You're not as smart as me, and if you don't like that, you can go somewhere else. Which is
Yeah.
what needs to be said, but it needs to be said in a different way.
Well, don't serve the steak on the trash can lid. That would
Yeah,
have been my
right.
response in my 20s.
Because
I'm the expert
there's
here,
just
you know?
so much more to gain from handling that in a more tactful way than just making yourself feel better by
Well, the
letting
thing
them know,
is a lot of
because
that's an ego response, right? Is you're like, hey, like,
absolutely.
don't, I know better and I know this or I know that. But
Yep.
that's also part of being a business owner and making some of those mistakes and growing up and being like, hey, like, how could I handled that differently? You know, like So like, for example, like I want my agents to listen to their calls. It's part of their daily routine. They have to listen to their calls, one or two of their calls, either successful or non-successful, depends on the day. And I want them to reflect, like, could you have said that differently? Do you hear your tone? Do you hear how you sound? And we make our care team members do that too, because I want them to hear themselves, because it's really different when you hear yourself versus when you hear it real time you talking, because you may have a good intention and say, look, I am the expert here. I do know what I'm talking about. But the way you said it was like a steak on a trash can lid, right? But then when you listen to it, you're like, oh God, I shouldn't have said it like that. But then it's like, okay, so I need to build better credibility and better trust. So how can I do that different on this call? You
Yep.
know? So you have to be able to critique yourself and mentor yourself in those ways so that for me, is a client always right? No. Have I helped people before and been in the same situation? Yes. Is it frustrating? Absolutely. But if it's a repeated habit, if you start seeing this on a frequent basis, then you as the agent are the problem. You're doing something wrong and you need to fix it. And it's
Yep.
okay to say, like, for example, when I was selling to my friends and family, I really don't like to do that often, but when I do, I'm upfront with them now. I'm like, okay, great. Well, I'm going to go ahead and research this for you. And then I will help you enroll in this plan. It's not going to cost you extra by working with me versus online, like let's say the marketplace. It's the same price. But if I do all this, I would like your business. Does that sound right? Does that sound fair?
Mhm.
And it does. And I never had a problem after that. I'm
Yep.
just upfront with people about how I do business.
Yep. Yeah. Something clicked though. What clicked in you that said, I need to stop being so principled and aggressive and wanting to get in my way pridefully to where you're at where you just described.
Well, I just didn't like certain things, like when people meet me, I want them to be like, wow, she's very professional, she's valuable, she's knowledgeable, you know, I just want people to view me a certain way, and they're not going to see that if I'm always delivering steak on a trash can lid. You know what I mean? And am I perfect? Absolutely not. And do I cuss? Absolutely, I do. And do I make mistakes? Yes, I do. We all do. So whatever. But I had to work through the ego challenges, which actually what I realized is when you have an ego, it's just a mask of insecurity. And so when I was like, okay, well, why am I insecure? And, I had to work through some of that. And actually, I had a great conversation with Danielle Roberts, and she actually helped me overcome some of my own insecurities. Because as entrepreneurs, we all have them. Like we feel like either we're not doing good enough, we're not moving fast enough, something. There's always something, maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome. I really hate throwing that out there because I don't want people to always affiliate themselves as that. And by the way, if you always like, I have imposter syndrome, that self-talk, and that's what Danielle Roberts taught me a lot, is if you keep saying these things to yourself, you are going to continue to have that same problem.
Yep.
So if you're like, I'm always late. Well, guess what? You're always going to be late, you know?
Yeah.
So, or if you're like, I have ADD. Right, you do, but you can still be organized. So, I think a lot of that, I just, over the years is like, okay, I want to do this. I want to feel this way. Like, I don't like putting my name out there, and I just like don't like having the attention and all that. And I don't know why. I just didn't really ever like that. I kind of don't like it because you just don't want people giving you negative feedback. But weirdly, I don't care what other people say per se, unless it's constructive. Um, but I'm okay now. Like I'm okay if somebody doesn't like our interview today.
Yeah.
It's fine. I'm okay with it. It doesn't hurt me that some person I don't know doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't. And I think it's just mental maturity and me wanting to grow as a business owner. And I look at people in business like Anna Wintour from Vogue.
Mhm.
I look at her personality. I look at, Steve Jobs. I like read a lot about or I read or listen to books on people's biographies because I want to learn how successful people are. And a lot of them are not distracted by the noise and they're
Yep.
okay with whatever happens.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
So
So you were, before you got into insurance, you got a degree in biology and you were working in that field. What did you do? Were you
No,
working in a lab or
I was,
hospital?
no, I didn't actually ever get a job using my degree. Shockingly, I know. I was doing interviews for labs here in Houston to work in a lab, microscope, all that jazz. And I was offered the job, but the pay just wasn't what I needed it to be.
Mhm.
And I was like, man, I don't know what to do. Um, and I remember in one of my first interviews, it was for a sales job doing telecom. That's the one that I actually took and did. But they're like, well, how are you going to use a biology and chemistry degree for sales? And I was like, well, and I'll tell you what, my dad is a really good BSer, and this came in handy. Okay. So I was like, well, I was in a lot of labs and we had to do a lot of like predictions. So we had to like forecast what we thought was going to happen based on the science that we knew. So, and when it didn't happen, we had to identify the different variables that impacted the outcome that changed our hypothesis. You know what I mean? And the guy was like, I have no idea what you're saying. I'm like, basically, this applies to sales because what do we do every day? We look at a bunch of numbers, we make predictions on the market, what it's going to do, and then we have to look at all the variables and either fix them before they happen, aka overcome objections. I just didn't know the terminology at the time because I was never in sales, so I like somehow figured out how to explain that to this guy, and thought it was really entertaining, and he hired me. But that was my first time BSing somebody, and I was actually pretty good at it. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I can do this.
So if you could do it over again, would you go to college or would you go, if you had your choice, would you go
Yes,
to college or would you
I
go
would.
straight into
I,
insurance?
nope, I would do it all over again the way I did it because I got so I became a Medicare broker before the CMS guidelines hit, like literally August before they hit. And I was with an FMO and I didn't know anything. They gave me a summary benefits. It said, hey, the appointment takes 15 minutes, have them sign here, fax it to us, we're good. And I'm like, cool. Well, I never got paid by my FMO, that AAP, and I had to go get a job. So I went to go work for a company called Bravo Health and I was account manager. So I trained brokers all over Houston, put them in doctor's offices. Literally my very first day on the job, my boss was so busy. She's like, hey, I need you to go meet this agent and go talk to this doctor and get them to start working together. And I'm like, I barely know how to spell Medicare. Okay. Like, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
She's like, just say this, 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 and this. Now, one thing I am very good at is I'm a mimicker. So I can say this, and this, next steps, and I'm out. Right. So that's how I am. So it worked out good. Bravo Health was acquired by HealthSpring, then by Cigna. I went to go work for a brokerage firm. And then I started my own agency. So I forgot your question.
If you could have your choice at
Oh yeah,
18,
I
would
would
you
do it
still
back.
go to college or would you go
Yeah,
straight
I
into
would do it.
insurance?
I would do it because I wouldn't have been able to get my job at Bravo Health without my degree. And because I have exposures from the carrier side, it really helped me bring value to other people in our business once I became an agency owner. Like I knew what the carriers were wanting, and I could really educate agents who didn't have exposure to that side of the business. I mean, I was involved in the actual business of insurance. So when you have that mentality of the business of insurance, then you understand benefit design, then you understand the systems and processes of where your issues are with a client. And then if I didn't have my degree, I wouldn't have had that knowledge or that experience to go on to work at a brokerage firm. So when I started my agency, I started with a wealth of knowledge and a network I would not have had otherwise. Now, does that mean a degree is required to be successful? Absolutely not. But I would have done it again. I think there's a level of experience I got that I would not have been afforded at that time. And I do think you can see the differences in some people, not everybody, because I think there's incredibly talented people who didn't go to college, but they're very educated. Educated doesn't mean that you went to college all the time.
Right.
I know people like Justin Brock, he has like an extensive vocabulary, him and Tempest Brock. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like I have to do a word of the day to keep up with them sometimes. And they're incredibly smart people. Actually, I don't know if they went to college or not, actually. But regardless, what I do know is you don't have to go to college to be educated. I would go back because that's my path and I don't live in a place of regret. So I think I would have. I do want my son to go get some type of degree for maturity and like just learning a skill set. I will say when he goes to college, he will learn a skill set type of degree. I don't want him to get a degree in philosophy.
Right.
I don't want him to get a degree in marketing. I want him to probably get it like a finance or accounting or something related to that, where it's a skill that you can use either in a business or in a career in a organization.
Right. Yeah, that's my wife and I differ on that because she went to college and she has a master's degree, and she's not used that particular bachelor's degree, but she's worked in a field that she probably couldn't have got a great job in without a degree. And then her master's degree is in her field, and she's doing great. And she just got a great new job that she probably wouldn't have gotten without that. But I didn't. I went to college just to kill a couple of years until I was old enough to go to the police academy, and I went.
And I think you needed credits from college to join the police academy. Did you not?
No, we didn't at that time, and we still don't really for most departments. Only certain departments that can't afford to be really picky about who they hire.
Funny story. I actually applied to the for HPD, Houston Police Department.
Oh.
And I was like desperate. And I was like, oh my God, I need a job. Like I'm just gonna go be a cop.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's
I was like, I didn't get in, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah. And and had a great career there, and walked away from that one day and went and got into insurance and doing pretty great now. But I don't know. We had disagree about whether it's how essential it is for our kids to go to college.
I don't know that it's essential.
But
I don't think it's essential. I just think that it depends on what your kids can do. Are they going to have a plan? What's their plan? And if you ain't got no plan, then you're going to either a trade school or you're going to college, and you need to figure out something. Like my parents raised me that when you turn 18, you were either joining the military or you're going to college. You pick, I don't care which one, but you're doing one of those and you're not living here. And I was like, okay. Now, that wasn't necessarily applied to my brother, but even when I had my son in college, there was no option. There was, I am going to graduate. There's no, I have to, because this is what I was told to do. Yep. And not everyone has that personality, but I don't think that a college degree is as essential, but I do think that for some people, they do need it. They need it to get through maturity, or they need it to learn a skill, or they need it. I call college and trade school the same. To me, they're the same. I think they're both very valuable in their own respect, but I don't define success based on if you have a degree or not. I don't. It's up to you as an individual.
Yeah. I had a boss one time who had multiple advanced degrees just say that bachelor's degree just means you were able to hang in there for 4 years. It really doesn't mean anything. But I mean, it does in certain fields. Obviously, you have to have
engineering, nursing.
Yeah, you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, an accountant. You have to have a degree, but anything else, you don't have to. Now, you may only be able to go so far without it. Law enforcement's a good example. You can only promote so far without a degree. If you want to be a chief or higher level management, you're probably going to need to have a degree unless you're the chief of a 5-person department.
I just wish that our colleges were geared towards an actual job. Like I wish you were learning the skills for that said job instead of all this logic and theories and things that don't apply. Like if you want to be a doctor, great. You're going to take 2 years of science so that when you go to med school, like I also don't think you need to be in school for 4 years. Like I don't agree with that. And my husband's from Denmark, and I really like their education setup. Because they're already starting, like, I think they go through their elementary, middle, and high school is only through 10th grade. Then they like choose where they want to go, but their skills, like their education's like, do you want to do logistics? If you want to be a nurse, what kind of nurse? Do you want to work in a pharmacy? Do you want to work at a hospital? Do you want to, so it's actual like skills that like turn into a job. You want to be a teacher, you want to be a professor, like, and you have this like career path that starts with education. So you have this education and these are your career paths. And if you need additional education, you see that. And I just wish our colleges were like that. And I think if they don't start becoming like that, everyone's going to have a degree that's completely irrelevant.
That's pretty much the case now.
I mean, I do think so. Like,
Except, for the higher professions, most college degrees, well, I won't say that. I won't make that statement, but I would say that it's probably a fair assumption that most people with bachelor's degrees are not working in that field.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing too, like in business, right? I'm not going to say their name or the college because people will know I'm talking about, and I don't want to single anyone out, but there's this new agency and they have a technology platform and they're like, they called me and I always like want to see what everybody's got going on, right? Especially technology. And so they talked to me and this lady just kept talking about her college. Like, oh, I went to insert school. It's like, oh, I went to, being a graduate of, and I'm like, lady, I do not care. Like, I just want to know, like, does your technology help me in my business? And it like, I love that she went to college and she's very proud of it. I love that for her. And I love that. And I say that in a really genuine way. I think it's great because it's not a easy school to get into. So I can tell that she's uber smart. But the problem is that can't be your whole identity.
Right.
You can't just be like wherever you went to school. Like that can't be all that you got to offer on a sales call, I mean, it does bring value, and yes, I do think you're intelligent, but this isn't really that knowledge that you keep saying over and over and over again. It's not helping me understand how this is applying to my business. I don't find that impressive. And if you're talking to somebody, and I have a degree, so if you're talking to somebody that doesn't have a degree, they're really not going to find it impressive. They're actually going to probably take it kind of like, why do you keep throwing that in my face? Like, I don't care, So I think that I was talking to a friend of mine. He is in charge of HR at Exxon here in Houston. I don't think he's in charge of all of it, but he does a job there. So I was like, hey, this new generation that's coming into the workforce, like, what are some things that you're noticing? What should we like be prepared for? I'm just trying to get an idea of what's coming. And he said, people, because of social media, they are really identifying with their job. So does your job, are they philanthropic? Are they, all the things, like global warming? What's their opinion on all these things? And he's like, and it's really hard because like, if you're an insurance company, why do you care? Why do you have an opinion as an insurance company on global warming? Now, I'm not saying we don't have one individually, but like I have to take a stance on things that aren't related to insurance, But he's saying that people through social media are identifying through their college and through their workforce. It's like a social status. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And so now I'm like, okay, well, like if I want to recruit top talent, I better get I need to be socially acceptable, like I got to like figure it out. Yeah. But it's interesting. And I think that's sometimes where I think people make a mistake with college is like that's your identity. And that's not who you are. Like this lady that I spoke to, eloquent, super smart. And if she could get that college thing, like that's great factoid to share at the beginning. But if she could get past that, she's so much more than the college she went to. And I could see that, but I was just getting like annoyed because she said it like 6 times. It's not like it was 1 or 2 times.
Yeah.
And even in their emails, they reference it. Like, oh, we graduated from here and we do this. And I'm like,
right.
What in the world?
So you'll see some other, kind of non-industry influencers like Grant Cardone, for instance, will say college is a waste of time. Don't waste of money. Don't other people say that it's like a thing now. But that's, first of all, they're not talking to 15, 16, 17-year-olds, right? They're talking to people who've already, are in college or just graduate.
Well, unfortunately, when you go on social media, you don't know who you're talking to.
Yeah, well, that's
You know,
true.
so I don't think that people should give a blanket statement of like, oh, it's a waste of money. Well,
Yeah.
really, are you going to pay their bills when they don't get a job?
Yep.
You know, are you going to take them under your wing and mentor them? I'm sure he will, but he's going to need a $10 or $20,000 price tag.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
so I think it's really important that as we go on platforms like this and we share it publicly, like I'm sure I've said maybe some controversial things. I don't know. That's my opinion. I don't care. But I do think that people need to be conscientious of what they listen to, because that's not how you make your decision because of what some guy that you don't know and don't know anything about his business or woman.
Right.
You can't rely on what people say. You've got to do your own due diligence, even as a student at 18 years old, you know,
Right.
at
Yeah.
17 years old.
The context is important because you don't need a college degree to start a business, but if you have a business degree, it'd probably have a little bit of an advantage, wouldn't you?
Well, you know that what was that show, Duck Dynasty,
Hmm.
right? So they had a business that was successful
Yep.
and they did a really good job. And then I think one of the sons went to college and got a business degree. And then their business went,
Yeah.
okay. So obviously wasn't a waste of time or money for him. I've
Right.
already made my money back from my experience just on my salary that I made in corporate America. So I don't think it's a waste of time or money, but I also don't think it's required to
Right.
be successful or to make a decent living. And to me, education's education. It doesn't matter if you get it at a university, if you get it through a coaching program, a mentor, if you get it from a trade school. To me, education is education. And I don't think that we should always be like, oh, you have to go to college. You have to. Now, if you want to be an engineer, guess what? You have to go to college. It's like
Yep.
required, you know? But if you don't know what you want to do, don't just go there so that you go like, well, I'm going to figure out I'm there. Because guess what? Ain't nobody going to help you figure it out. So you
Right.
better start doing other things. Go get a job. Go start working, learning those types of things, because I believe in education of all things.
Mhm.
I still pay a lot of money every year for education. And I don't even get a degree or a certificate. I don't get anything for it.
Yeah.
I
Right.
just get the knowledge and then I go and use it and apply it. And then it comes back to me in the long run.
Yep.
So I guess, and I don't regret getting my degree and I would do it again. I do think that I don't think it's necessary to have it, but I do think as somebody who's listening to this, I think that you need to determine that for yourself. And you need to have some kind of plan and skill. And if you don't have a skill, you ain't going to always learn everything on YouTube. I mean, it's great, but you probably need to go get some skills.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah. Those are what do they call them? Hard skills. That's the term these days. You can't learn that from YouTube.
no,
Uh,
I mean, you have soft skills, you have hard skills. I don't know
yeah.
all the skills, but you need something. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's probably would be a lot more of the value that I would see in college, especially going away to college
Yeah.
versus going to college close to home where you still live at home
Yeah.
is, kind of being out on your own, but still kind of being under the protection of,
Yeah. Do
the
you know
school and your parents.
whenever I left for college, our dorm had mold in it. So we had to live at the Hilton for like 2 weeks. And so we're like, what in the world? So I had to find a job, live at the Hilton with all my stuff that I need to put in the dorm room. And you know what was the most interesting experience? And I know people are going to be like, what is she talking about? I had to go to the grocery store and I had to buy my own shampoo and conditioner and toilet paper and cleaning products. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so expensive. But you need to know what that feels like. You need to see the sticker shock of your $25 shampoo and conditioner that mommy and daddy were always paying for, you know?
Yep. Yep.
And I
That's right.
remember calling my mom. I'm like, Mom, did you use coupons or something? Or what? Like, how do I get this for cheaper? You know? And she found that my mom got a really big kick out of it because that was literally my first phone call. Well, I spent $300 at the grocery store and I only have like lunch and dinner and breakfast for a week.
Yep.
And my mom's like, what? And so I sent a picture of the receipt and she's like, oh my God, you had to buy shampoo. And normal, you know? But those are skills you're not going to learn if you don't go do it.
That's right. Yeah, I agree with that. How'd you get from the sales jobs, non-insurance sales jobs into insurance? How did that work?
I actually had a good friend of mine. His name's Clay. I'm still good friends with him today. He left. We worked for a company called CBON. It was a telecom company. He left to go work for State Farm, and he got me a job working at another State Farm office. And I was really hoping to own my own State Farm agency one day. Um, I just didn't like the property and casualty side of the business. It was a lot of work. I thought I could help like literally anybody, but they have to have good credit, they had to have coverage before and like this whole thing, right? So I was like, oh, I don't like this. And I ended up leaving and going to sell Medicare before the guidelines hit and stuff. So that's how I got into insurance. Was mainly because I wanted to own my own business.
Mhm.
And I started owning my own business. I started in the Medicare business as a broker, owning my own business, and I was not successful. I had no idea what I was doing, no mentorship, nothing. Then I went and go work for a carrier. So I was very unsuccessful my first year
Yeah.
until I went to go
And
work.
so you were independent. You didn't work for a captive company.
Nope, I was independent. I had to find my own leads, how to do all that. So when all the marketing guidelines hit, I had no idea what to do. I was like, how do I get leads now?
And nobody to guide you.
No, I didn't. Luckily, they had done mailers, and so I had run those leads, but I never got paid. And I didn't have anything in writing because, like, well, who wouldn't pay me? Like, that's just, I mean, whatever. So I learned a lot of the mistakes I made as an unsuccessful business owner is what helped me realize, like, hey, I need to be more serious about this than just selling a product, you know?
Right. And so at some point you realize this isn't a job. This is a business. This is my business and I'm the boss.
Yes.
And I only have one employee. So I'm the boss of me and I don't really have anybody to complain to because who am I going to complain to?
About me.
Yeah, about me.
Yeah.
That's the thing I love about being in business is I I don't have anybody to complain to or about.
No, I don't either, except for myself. And I guess that's where a lot of accountability comes in, right?
Mhm.
Because you're like, okay, I have to get better or I'm going to go broke. So what do I need to do? And I think that it takes a lot for somebody to realize that. Now, I've met people that they want it this way, certain way, they don't need help, whatever. And basically they've created a prison for themselves and they don't want to hold themselves accountable to changing anything. And it's unfortunate. And there's some people that are very close to me that I love them to death and they're like that. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you.
Yep. Well, I had that talk with my agents, my team here a few months ago was um, just kind of based on that number that you gave us. That's 98%, 92% of agents fail, and I would I would say that number's way off because I know agents that have been in this business steadily for 15 years that I would not consider successful. But they
Yeah,
make just
it might be
enough to get
more. It might be more, but it depends on what everybody's goal is,
by. Right.
right?
You got to, what's the timeline? Like, how long does it take to be successful? What's your definition of successful?
Yeah.
They might
Well, I
consider
think it's important
themselves.
to define that whenever you're talking to like an upline partner or trying to be affiliated to people, it's like, well, what is their definition of successful? Because I mean, you can be like, I'm a successful agency owner, I'm a successful agent. And people may be, but like I may be looking for my success definition might be different, which doesn't mean that they're not successful. They are successful in what their terms are, but mine
Yep.
are different. And I have
Yep.
different goals. So like, can you help me get to that goal or not? And so we've had to reposition some of our partnerships because I need to be with people who are really good at that.
Yeah.
So like our ACA, IMO, I absolutely love them. I've been with them for years. They're really good. But they're the experts about that stuff. And then I align my LOAs with an agency that they're really great at LOAs. Like they're great at that. And I'm seeking people that are really great at that. And that's who I want to partner with. But their definition of success is the same as mine. The results are there. So then it's proven success, not just what their definition of it is. And so, Ron, you have a successful agency. I have a successful agency. But if we're talking to somebody who wants a $2 billion agency, then we're not very successful to them. You know what I
That's right.
mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so everyone's definition. I think that as long as you feel success in what you're doing, you shouldn't listen to anybody else.
Mhm.
But don't go out there and say, well, I'm successful, and then put up fake results or fake numbers to justify. I don't like that. That's
Right.
not being transparent,
Yeah, we see that a lot too, and on social media. So, all right, so we're going to run out of time here. I want to wrap it up. Tell us quick about like where you're at now. I know you've got an agency. It's mostly health and life and retirement planning, but you've got a business partner and you work with different peoples. Is it mostly locally? You work nationally? Tell me
No,
about how Wise
we
Up
do.
Financial works.
So, on our
There's a lot
Wise
of questions.
Insurance, Wise Up Financial is our company, but Wise Insurance is our consumer facing brand. We do work with a lot of Vietnamese clients. We're adding a Chinese agency, and we're growing the Asian community because there's just a big need on education there and helping that community get the benefits they deserve and need, right? And with good information too. And then we have our other company is Wise Partners. That's where our 1099s are. That's where I have agency partners and agent partners. That's what I call them. I've always called them that. I know that's the new mantra, but I've always done that.
Okay. I'm going to tell people. There's a couple of people I'm going to tell that you didn't start that. Emily did.
Yeah, no. I mean, there are some people that did it before, but I know that I've seen some people. I'm like, you used to call them downlines. Don't act like you. But the thing is that Wise Partners is a national footprint. We do have agents and agencies in other states. We like to work with agencies and really help agencies who want to grow that just don't have the mentorship to do that. So that's one of the big aspirations that I have. And I'll give you an example real quick. We took an agency out of Louisiana. She really wanted to grow this agency. She's a big grassroots marketer, not a big digital marketer, which is fine. And we gave her the systems and the processes, and we're helping her build and solve problems that were in her business so that she can focus on bringing in more people and building that channel. And so we also work with independent agents as well. We have a really good team here. We're expanding our team because we are growing a lot. So we're just in expansion mode. Like, I want to help as many agencies and agents that want to treat this as a business.
Yeah.
You want to treat it as a business, then yes, come work with us.
That's the most frustrating thing to me is working with agents that still think it's a job. And I guess that's fine, but
see the value in it. Like, if you want an exit strategy, if you want to sell your business one day, I want to help you do it. I mean, I love business. I love everything about it. Well, most of it. Some of it's a little shady. You deal with people that are crazy, but I love business and I want agents to treat it like a business. They deserve it. Their families deserve it. They take all this time out of their life to build something. It is a business. So I want to help them. And that's basically what we're doing right now. We're expanding. We're bringing on new agency partners, agents. We built out our systems to allow it. We have a great team. So I'm really excited for this year. I think we're going to be doing really well.
That's one of the things I've really grown to admire about you is you know so much more about the back behind the curtains business part of it. Like anybody can figure out how to sell insurance if they try hard enough, but how do you structure your business entity and how do you build it in a way that you can sell it, or you have a succession plan. What happens if you die? It can be a big mess, and you help people like fix that from the beginning so they don't have those problems.
Yeah, I talked to a guy this morning. I mean, he's a successful Medicare supplement broker. I mean, he's built a great agency and he doesn't have a succession plan. I'm like, here, take this checklist and go do it, and he was worried about it because he's got sons he cares about, and I just think I'm wanting to talk about these things because I think agents need to know about it, but it also came from experience. I mean, we had 2 deaths of our agent partners, 2 of them that passed away. And it kills me like that. Luckily we were able to save their book of business and their families were able to get it, but it was down to the wire. And it was, I'm telling you, I don't feel like agents deserve that. And we tried to prep one of them because we didn't know about it, honestly. So we tried to prep one of them. He just never did it. So now I'm like, no, you guys have to do this. Like, you have to have something because I'm the one and Kim's the one that has to talk to your grieving family to
Yeah.
make sure you get paid. They get paid.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're the ones. So now I'm like really passionate about it. But I want agents to treat this like a business. You deserve it. You're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner. You're so much more than you just selling one policy to a person in front of you. You're way more than that. And I believe in them sometimes more than they believe in themselves.
That's awesome. So I want to ask one more question. What should I ask you that I haven't yet?
Oh, man, I don't know. What should you ask me? Oh, are you going to Medicare Con?
Are you going to Medicare Con?
Yeah, I am going to Medicare Con.
Are you speaking?
Yeah, I'll be on a panel. I will be on a panel there. I personally think that it's really important for agents to get exposure to things that they don't know. You don't know what you don't know. Get out to events, meet people, vet out the event too. Make sure that you know people who've gone to the event. And I really like Medicare Con. I love the agents that go and the agencies. I think there's going to be a whole slew of speakers that we haven't heard from before in the industry. I think there's a whole slew of sponsors that are going to be able to provide good information. So I'm really excited.
Yeah.
To be here for that.
Yeah, me too. I think that one's grown into what's probably going to be the most valuable conference currently that you can go to, as far as being able to go to it and take home actual actionable information that you can turn around and make money on. You just have to be sure that you're that kind of person.
Well, and that's true. And so like when people go to conferences, right? When I go, I identify what are some things I need help with in my business. So I already have like certain things I need help with in my business. So when I go to Medicare Con, I'm going to be asking people those questions and seeing what they have to say and see if like I'm heading in the right direction or what. But the thing is I can pull information out of it. I can pull something of value from any speaker, whether they're new, whether they sell a product I don't, doesn't matter. You can learn something from everybody. But I really encourage people, if they are going, actually it's sold out. So if you don't even have a ticket, you got to go next year. But if they are going, identify some issues that they're having in their business and make sure that they can solve those problems. There's somebody there that can help you with it.
Yeah, I would start with that. Don't like go and try to find something new, because that's the mistake that I make at conferences sometimes, or used to. Is I want to go and I learn 12 different things, new things, and then I come home and got all these ideas and I throw it in my team and they go, we don't want to do any of that. We just want to do what we're doing. And then I'm just
you have to grow too, so if you're like, hey, I need marketing ideas, you're going to learn new things.
Yeah.
But then you're going to also be like, man, like I went to LeadCon a few weeks ago and I sat in and there was like these 4 lawyers. It was a breakout session and they were talking about a compliance program or a policy or something like that. And I was like, for us, we are heavily compliant. So I'm like, well, we have CMS guidelines. Well, that's not what they meant. And they always say, like, if you ever get in front of CMS or if you get in front of Health and Human Services, or maybe the SEC called you because you have some call violations, like, what are your policies and procedures? What is your staff using? So I'm like, whoa. So what did I do? I went and created an outline. I went and chat GPT and put it in there and got some ideas from there, because that's a great resource to use too. You don't want to copy and paste it, but I started creating a compliance program. And now I'm working with somebody I'm onboarding as a compliance officer to help us make it look good. And now I'm going to make sure that all my agents have it, because ignorance of the law is not going to help you in your business, A, and B, not having one actually looks worse. So if a carrier says, hey, you got a complaint, I'm like, well, here's my compliance program. They're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, I learned that and I wasn't planning on that being a lead.
Right. Yeah. And so that's what I try to do, is either ahead of time identify a problem that I'm having and see, if I don't get something out of the actual content, I'm going to find somebody there to talk to and see, what have you done?
Exactly.
I try to avoid the new stuff as much as I can, like totally new, but new marketing or new product, that's all good.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't go and hear about artificial intelligence and be like, well, I want to learn all about that at
Yeah.
medicare. Well, you're probably gonna get exposure to it maybe from somebody, but like to learn all about technology at those things, I don't know, but it is good to get exposed to what's available out there. I'm very thankful of that conference and the people who hosted. It was Justin Brock and his guru marketing team. I am thankful for people. That's how I got to know you. That's how I got to know a lot of the people in the industry, but they are helping people get in front of information. And so you may get a taste of something you want to look at later, but just really have something that you're solving when you're there.
Yeah. Okay. So as an influencer in this business, I know people have told me that too, and I'm like, really?
I'm an
Think so.
influencer, but
I don't think anybody actually likes me, but whatever.
oh, I think I've
So,
never heard anything bad about you. I've always heard people love you.
oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
You're talking to different people I am. So who do you find inspiration from? Just on the just kind of the content and influencing scene?
In our business or just in general?
Yeah, just in general.
I do draw inspiration from my business coach, JT Fox, which I think that he has an incredible schedule and he's ultra productive, and a lot of how his mannerisms and how he is kind of what helps me get through. Like if I'm tired, like it's raining today, I'm a little tired. I'm like, oh, JT too. He would not be talking about this. He'd be on a call, like doing something, But I like Anna Wintour. I like how she's just a certain way, like her personality. And she's taken very serious in an industry that is really tough. So I respect that she can be a power boss and that she is a female in the business, in the fashion industry of all. And people respect her and they don't look at her as like that. They just look at her as like, she's respectable, she's professional, she's like the queen of it all, So I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. So, and then I draw inspiration from my mom and a lot of our partners. There's days where I'm just like, I don't want to do this anymore. Just whatever it is, and then I think about the people that rely on us, like our team here in our office or our downline partners, our upline partners. And I mean, I really they do inspire me a lot because they're doing incredible things. And like I grow as they grow. And then, we're just in it to win it together. So
yeah, that's right. Okay. So last part here is just a real quick kind of lightning round, yay or nay. So that's it. I'm going to give you a name.
Lightning round, yay or nay.
Name of somebody out there, and you get about a half a second to think about it. You have to say yay or nay. Okay. All right. Are you ready? You don't seem too confident.
I'd rather eat anchovies or something. You know that game that they play? Okay.
No, it's not would you rather. Okay. It's just public figures.
Oh, okay.
Dave Ramsey.
Nay.
Grant Cardone.
Nay.
Russell Brunson.
Yay.
The Kardashians.
Yay.
Patrick Bet David.
Yay.
Gary V.
Yay.
Okay. Now you have to pick one that is your thing and the other two have to go away. Okay. Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok.
One to keep or one to go away?
One to keep.
TikTok.
Okay. And running an insurance agency or business development?
Business development.
Yeah, that's what I thought you'd say. All right. Well, you passed the test.
Awesome.
Emily, thanks so much. You're going to be here in town at my shop next week.
Yep. April 6th. We're going to do a provider marketing training, which I think is a really great way for agents to get out there, especially if they're brand new and they want to start getting exposed. So I think it's going to be a really great training. I actually invited a couple of Michael Binyaminov to come as well. So he'll get to be trained on that. So it'll be really good.
Yeah, I'm going to have to bring in a couple extra chairs.
Yeah.
And I've got some agents coming up from Corpus that are going to do this. And then, so that's just kind of a private in-house training that we're really grateful for. And then we're going to go out and have a little a networking event, just to free if you're within driving distance in New Braunfels, Texas, or or if you want to jump on a plane and come down and network with some awesome people over some German beer and sausage at Krause's, then we can, we're happy to see you. So thanks again. It's been really great getting to know you even better. And we'll see you soon.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Emily.
No problem.